It's so exciting for me to be here to introduce my good friend and colleague, Katherine, because she's written a book that's not only very close to my heart, but also, I think, a really important book. It has a lot of themes that are not just to do with opera. It has to do with how we rate success, what the course of a career over a lifetime is, decisions that we make, compromises, sacrifices, compensations that we enjoy. And I think it's just extraordinary that she's written it. You'll hear as we talk how busy she is in her life as an opera singer to have found the time to write this incredible book. You know, we have this thing called the Sydney Opera House in Sydney, and we're all very proud of it and very fond of it, I think. It's every time I cross the bridge, I think that's incredible. But I don't know that a huge amount of the population has much of an idea about what goes on inside it, or certainly not about what goes into an opera production, and what the life of an opera singer is, and what the requirements of a career in opera are. And you know, we often, us arty types, we often think, you know, Australia's so keen on sport, and if only we could get some of that enthusiasm into opera specifically. And I think, I've always felt a lot of it is that in sports we have commentators. I remember Torval and Dean, they're just in the news again doing a return tour. I remember watching them when they were first dancing with the commentator saying, and now they're going for a triple axel, and now they're doing this, and now we're going to turn off the commentary so we can listen to Ravel's Bolero. And the Olympics is full of commentary. And I often think if we could go to an opera performance and somebody could be in our ears saying, and now she's going for the high C. This is one of the most demanding phrases in all of classical music. Now you'll see her getting ready, oh, and she's going for it, and oh, she didn't hold it as long today as she's... I think we need this. And I think that Katherine has written this gem, which is delightful to read, but it also really gives you an idea of the training and the years and the auditions and the life and what it's like, the daily life of that opera singer. So I just wanted to ask you to start, how did you decide to write a book? Have you been writing diaries? And I know you're a photographer. Did it start as just notes?
It actually started, I would put little things in my phone. I would, like funny things that were said in the dressing room that mean, you know, that make the complete sense to us, that to anybody else would just go, what even is that, when we get called to stage, or something like, you know, a makeup artist will come in and say, ladies, can I collect your facial hair boxes? You know, when we had to all dress up as Masons for Meistersinger and stuff like that. Or when you kill yourself, can you come back to the centre to die? You know, things like that. So you can't die slightly prompt, you've got to die centre because that's where the light is, and all those sorts of things. And then actually the main reason I sort of really started focusing on writing it is because myself and my fellow choristers, at times when we were talking in the dressing room, and believe me, this 12 group of girls, and it's on and off, it's been slightly more numbers, but it's pretty much a core group of 12, and we pretty much know everything about each other. I remember once a husband coming in between shows because they had to go to him and his wife, who was in the chorus, had to go to a wedding, and she stripped off, and she was changing, and James went, Phoebe, you can't do that in front of the... And she goes, they see me in my underwear more than you do, love. And we really know everything about each other. But we were starting and talking about derogatory comments that we hear from being in the chorus, because there's that perception that if you're not in the front row, you haven't been as successful. And I've myself had a lot of derogatory comments and snide comments and side comments. A friend of mine, when she joined the chorus at Covent Garden, was told she was joining the Singers' Graveyard, and yet she's had this incredible career at Covent Garden, singing with some of the most incredible artists in the world. And someone said to me once, "Oh, I think I've heard of your name, but you haven't done anything substantial, have you?" And I thought, wow, I've been on the stage of that opera house for nearly 17 years. And I'm one of 8 people in Australasia with a full-time job, a soprano. That's it. That is the reality of the industry. So for me, it was really important when I realised that there's no book out there that actually reflects or celebrates or gives a voice to ensemble performers. And you see them in every production, where you see them in a choir, and anyone that sings in a choir, anyone goes to a musical. For example, like the musical Hamilton, everyone looks at the leads, but the ensemble in Hamilton are extraordinary. And, all your understudies are in the ensemble, or your covers, your swings, whatever you want to call them. And we turn up and do the show every single night. So for me, it became more of a passion project, and I needed to get this book out there. And there is no book out there that celebrates us. So it was a passion project very much.
And I'd like to come back to all of those negative feelings and perhaps apologetic stance of some people who are at certain levels of any career. But I'd just love you to talk about how you got into opera first. So just like sport, I'm going to keep pushing this because I feel as if it's a wedge into making it more popular, which is what we all hope for because we all love it so much. So like sports people, you have to have talent, natural talent, and then you have to undergo training, and then you have to audition or try out. And how did you find out that you had talent? She said, "Do I have talent?"
Yeah.
You have a lot of talent.
Isn't it? You sort of, when someone says, "Oh, your career," and you go, "Oh, yeah, that's my job, it's what I've done." But my mum was a singer, and so I always sung. And then when I left school, I didn't know really what I wanted to do. I was kind of known as the singer at school, which kind of annoyed me because I was also I did other things, but that's how I became pigeonholed. And I just thought, oh, well, I'll give this singing a go. I actually thought about becoming a cop, but I wasn't very good at running, so I would have let a lot of people go. And then I thought, oh, well, I'll, give the singing a go, went to university. And I never had aspirations to go overseas, but it's funny how when you start a journey, how doors just open, and then you widen your lens about what the possibilities are. So thankfully, having a British passport, I went on a one-way ticket to the UK and then auditioned and got into the Royal Scottish Academy in Glasgow. And that's when I still didn't even know that you could have a job as a chorister. Like, I didn't even know it was a full-time job because nobody leaves the tarmac in New Zealand to be a chorister. They're all going to be a star. And it's amazing, like, speaking to colleagues, someone who left the Conservatorium of Music in Sydney was when she went straight from university, when she graduated, she got a full-time job into the Opera Australia Chorus, was used as an example of what not to do by the staff, because they said, well, she's not going to have a career. Meanwhile, a colleague of hers who was a violinist got a job in the orchestra, and that she was celebrated for her position because she was seen as having a career. And there's no difference to being an orchestral player in an orchestra and being a singer in a chorus. It's still an achievable and a very successful position to get. So, and when I did my degree over in the UK, and I just thought, okay, now I'm going to be a star. I came out of that course like plankton. There's so many sopranos in the world, and there's so many that live over there, and then you realise you do all the audition tours, and you do all that, and you do the choral gigs, and you do all that sort of stuff, and you're sort of waiting to sort of catch that star or that one role that's going to catapult you, and it just didn't happen for me. And I thought, well, what am I going to do? I never thought about giving up. But then it also made me think, how do you define success as well? What's success? Like, I'm successful in my industry. I've managed to carve a career from being a singer and a successful singer, and I've done principal work with the company, and I've done principal work overseas, but it was just me widening my lens and going, okay, well, there must be another way, you know. And I got into Opera Australia literally through the back door. Like, it was through moving to Australia. I had one role, a lead role in Adelaide, and then from that, I sort of did this little audition for an opera called Dead Man Walking in 2007, and on the panel was Michael Black, who was the ex-chorus master, and I was temping, you know, just come to Australia with hardly any money and temping to get by until my gig in Adelaide started. Did this little audition, and then I was working for this French bank, which was the most boring temping job in the entire universe, but they had blocked all of the social media sites on their computers, so I had to go to this little internet cafe on Hunter Street in the city, in a 7-Eleven, and something said to me, check your junk box, and in my junk box was a 6-month contract with Opera Australia, and that was the day I had to choose to do the gig. And I couldn't do all the gig because I was in Adelaide, but they let me do 2. They said, if you can learn Tannhäuser and Gondoliers all on your own, off by heart, you've got the gig. So when I was doing Adina and Elixir of Love, I was trying to learn Wagner and Gilbert and Sullivan, and it's taken me a long time to love Wagner, I can tell you. And anyway, and I got in, and then some positions came up. Three positions for a soprano, which is like hen's teeth, isn't it? It
Absolutely.
is hen's teeth. And I got one of them, and the rest is history. And I've never ever looked back. And like I talk in my book, saying, you know, I'm more than happy to join the Singers' Graveyard. Thank you very much.
But it's funny, Katherine, you say it didn't happen for you, but actually you were working as a soloist overseas.
I
you
was.
Right?
Yeah.
You were working, you were singing solos in concert, you were singing in operas. The thing is, do we make a living from it? It's like being an actor. Like, you can be, that's very successful. You were like plankton when you graduated, but you were still getting cast as a soloist.
Mm.
The question is not, am I not good enough? The question is, can I pay the rent, right? And so many artists must come to that crossroads and make a decision. Do I stay overseas? Do I come home? Do I go to a different country altogether? And so I just think, even in the self-deprecating way that a lot of us speak, you know, well, it didn't happen to me. She was getting work that people would crawl over her face to get, you know, and still is, and came back and was in the chorus, but still performed and performs as a leading player in many operas. So it's what we consider success, and it's this sort of stratification thing, like the violinist in the back of the orchestra is at higher status than the people who are singing in the chorus. Now, I'd love Katherine to describe what her job is like singing in the chorus. Like, how many operas do you do in a year? How many different operas? Because Opera Australia is a repertory company, so it's got things going on all the time, different repertoire.
Usually 13 or
13
14.
operas.
13 or 14.
And how many languages would you have to sing in those operas?
Italian, German, French, Latin, Russian, Czechoslovakian and Sanskrit. We've done.
Sanskrit. They just did Philip Glass's
I don't know what it...
Satyagraha.
I wouldn't never be able to look at another Sanskrit score. Probably... well, Satyagraha was probably the only one in Sanskrit.
Right. I think so.
I'd say.
But they did it. They learnt it, you know. And then how many different characters might you play in a week?
Well, I actually play a lot of prostitutes. I have it down to a fine art, I can tell you. Courtesans, prostitutes, nuns, we've done it all. Society ladies, we've go to a lot of parties.
That's right, you drink a lot of champagne.
Yeah,
and
Ribena.
And the costumes, like, they must be very glamorous, right? I've seen you. For instance, the cover of Katherine's book is a picture of Katherine in this most gorgeous costume.
That's my dressing table, yeah.
So she's got the dressing table with the lights around it, and but so are they all glamorous, or do you have a
No.
variety?
And you don't have a choice as to what you wear. You know, you're literally a coat hanger, sort of what fits you, or if you're lucky, you will get a costume that's designed specifically for you. But and we all have sort of you know, artistic license to maybe lighten the costume occasionally if it's hot, or if you're going through hot flushes, or if you're, you know, sore, or your feet are sore, or something like that. Like, actually, it's quite funny because in Traviata, this production actually, if there's the one night there was a few girls away and they all had tiaras, that they were allocated a tiara, and some of us, I wasn't allocated a tiara. But actually, it's quite funny because when they were off sick, we all were like magpies. We all went to their jewellery box and went, "I'm taking the tiara, and I'm going to wear this, and I'm going to wear." We were like glitter balls on that stage. So we would share each other's jewellery, which was probably not the greatest thing to do, but we do that. Yeah.
So you've been in a group of men and women separated into different dressing rooms. So men's dressing room, women's dressing room. I believe there's quite an active poker game that goes on in the men's dressing room. What happens in that women's dressing room between scenes?
Well, there's been a jigsaw puzzle table for about 4 years.
Very wholesome.
There's a lot of tapestry happening, crochet happening, cups of tea happening, TV, watching. Actually, it was quite funny because when Handmaid's Tale came out, the last series came out, it dropped on a Thursday at 7 o'clock. And at Thursday at 7 o'clock, we'd be getting ready for the show at 7:30, and you'd get the call to the stage, and you go, no, I can't go, and we'd be watching, and you know how, because you get a 5-minute call, so you know how fine you can leave it before you actually you have to get to that stage to get on and do your job. Yeah, sometimes we have more fun in the dressing room, actually.
So, what does an opera singer need to study and master in order to get an elite job? As you said, one of the handful of full-time jobs in the Southern Hemisphere. What do you need to be able to do? I mean, a lot of people sing in choirs and think, so you just sing, right? And it's not like learning an instrument where you have to play notes accurately. What's the difference? What do you have to master?
I think as a chorister, you have to be able to sing all repertoire. If you were a soloist, you would usually sing a certain type of composer or specialise in certain type of music. For us, we have to be able to sing Wagner in the morning, Donizetti in the afternoon, Carmen the next day, Lucia the next afternoon. We have to look after our own vocal health. You're very, very disciplined. You can't go out to pubs. You can't go out to places where you have to, cafes where they have loud music. I hate that. I can't stand that. Discipline, sacrifice, huge amount of sacrifice, because, at 7:30 or 7 o'clock or 2 o'clock or 1 o'clock, the curtain goes up and you need to be there. And that's the way it is. And also, a lot of us, you have to put aside your personal problems, relationships, deaths. Everything has to be put aside to do that production for the audience, in the same way that we don't know what the audience is going through. And for, a couple of hours, for that person sitting out in the audience, it is also an escape from reality, I've seen, one day I remember this woman was literally in a hospital bed with 3 nurses around her for the entire performance, and you think, wow, the logistics of getting her there, and you think, was that her last wish? I don't know. I mean, I've seen things in the audience that have literally broken my heart. But, or the funny things are, there's someone will come on stage and they'll go, guide dog, row B, guide dog, check out the guide dog, he's really cute. Or or they're like, oh, they'll say, oh, Dustin Hoffman's in the audience, and you go, where? And we go, dunno. First one to find him gets a packet of chips, and we're like this, on stage singing, and you're not meant to be really like looking, but you're going. Or like, so in my book there's definitely chapters in there about corpsing. I am the worst corpser on stage, which of course is laughing on stage. I think Judi Dench calls it exquisite agony or something, which is so true because it is exquisite. I mean, in terms of what you're laughing about is hilarious, but it's always in the places where you're not meant to laugh, of course. And in live theatre, it can go horribly wrong. And so there's a whole chapter on that. There's a whole chapter of things like that go wrong on stage that sometimes the audience have seen, sometimes they don't see. We're very good at playing last card up the back in Act 3 in Carmen, and people bring on sweets to see who wins last card gets a fruit burst or something. You have to kind of sometimes you just kind of have to keep it real. You have to do this to get through the show because you're so tired.
But they're always in character, of course.
Always.
Those are the cigarette workers in Carmen up there having the sweets and things. And they do, I've seen them do it. They're always in character, even if they're having a bit of a laugh. Mm. Yeah. But you are really actors, and a lot of the time the chorus's job is often as the commentator or the narrator or the reactor, and they're the populace through which we can experience some of this heightened drama that the principals might be going through. So, and some of the most moving and beautiful music that you'll hear on the opera stage is sung by the chorus. And I wanted to pick up on something Katherine said about styles of music. So if you play, as an instrumentalist, if you play music from the Baroque period, you will play not on a piano but on a harpsichord, or you might play on Baroque instruments which have different strings. We have to do Baroque style singing with a different approach, perhaps a thinner approach to the sound because the orchestras weren't as big and the rooms were smaller. And then you might do a matinee of that, and then you might do in the evening a big Verdi opera which requires the most full-throated dramatic singing. And a chorus is, as you say in your book, chorus is made up of a whole lot of different types of sounds, and you have strengths in certain areas. And can you tell us a little bit about how you work as a team?
Yeah, I mean, like, for example, the end of Turandot, the chorus are on stage for nearly 3 hours, and it's a killer,
So that's a big
huge.
Puccini opera, which the famous aria Nessun Dorma comes from. And there's a wonderful Australian production of that Graham Murphy directed, where the chorus is on stage just about all night, aren't you? You're underneath a cloth making undulations, or you're standing up, or you're dancing, or it's extraordinary. And the singing required, if you think of Nessun Dorma, the tenor singing, and then the chorus comes in, and they've got to be just as committed and exciting. So that's what Katherine's talking about with Turandot.
Yeah, and so it's very vocally demanding. So sometimes, you'll be tired, and you'll know that, you'll think, oh, God, I can't get that top C tonight. I'm so like spent. But you know that there'll be 7, 8, 9 other sopranos that'll do it for you. Then, on the other hand, there'll be like the humming chorus from Madame Butterfly, which is just this most beautiful chorus that's just hummed, which is very similar to Bring Him Home from Les Miserables. And I'm someone that can sit up there and hum for days. So some people will conk out and they'll go, Kath's got it, she'll get the top B,
It's
of
really
course you can't
hard.
do that when you're a soloist, but you can do it as a chorister.
Yeah, but the soloists don't have to be on stage all night and have done another show in the afternoon, and the chorus are the ones that are there for every show. And actually, Katherine's ability to hum is really remarkable because Puccini has written this very difficult, demanding chorus which requires you to hum very, very high. So if you, let's all try. Can you all go, how high can you do it? Can you hum a little? How?
What?
that's real specialist work, and you have to have one person who can do it. I think Catherine's the one, and there are a couple of people who can almost do it as well. So we've got these elite people who take on those specific technical difficulties, and then it's shared around. So it's a great team in many ways. There also must be some rivalries. In the book you write about passing the baton. So often when you first join the chorus, you get some covers, some understudy roles, or some main roles, and then sometimes you get a little out of favour. And I think, and then you come back, and can you remember what you wrote about the baton? That you're passing the baton, and some will accept it.
Yeah, I said some people are happy to pass the baton, some people will fight you for it, and some people will hit you over the head for it. And, you know, you work with a group of 8 to 10 women with sopranos, and there's competition there, but it's natural, you know. But what we get cast as over and above our chorus job is out of our hands. And so you really, if you get cast in a role, you have to grab it with both hands, do your best. And in terms of if you get anything beyond that, because if you do covers or roles with Opera Australia, you get paid above your salary for that. So it can be quite lucrative, but it also means a lot of time in the rehearsal room. And there's, you know, competition. And there was actually a girl recently said, I'm covering for Skeda next year. And we were like, welcome to the club, love. Is this because we're a little bit older? Because it can be a very ageist industry, of course.
Can it? So it's kind of like acting then, when women have a certain use-by date sometimes, right? And there are men in the chorus, are they suffering from the same use-by date?
No.
So, but the good thing about a chorus is that it's supposed to resemble the populace, so we should have people of all nationalities, all heights, all shapes and sizes, and all ages. And so that's one of the wonderful things about a chorus, is that it's inclusive by its very nature, except they've all got to sing real well. And they've got to maintain that singing. And because they're doing so many performances of all these different styles with different requirements, they need to keep up their training like elite athletes for their whole careers, which hopefully are very long ones. How do you maintain your voice?
I've become less paranoid about my voice over the years since becoming professional. I think when I was younger, actually at university we had this really old battle axe of a singing teacher. She made every girl grow out their fringe. As you can tell, I've never grown it back, because she said, you know, it's important. Everyone's got to be able to see your face. She stopped us wearing scarves on stage because she said it cuts, you know, makes your body cut in half. We just learn through, the voice is a muscle. Your vocal cords are a muscle. So the more you utilise the muscle and work the muscle, for a soprano, your vocal cords are very long and slender. For a mezzo, they're thicker, shorter. For a rock singer, a musical theatre singer, they'll be thicker and shorter again. And I believe it's a genetic makeup. I started singing lessons and I wanted to be a Whitney Houston, I wanted to be a musical theatre star and stuff like that. But the more I trained, the more my voice, my muscles just developed. And I sort of compare it to someone who starts running when they're younger. You know, they have a physical, natural ability, whether it's a genetic ability to be a long distance runner or a sprinter, and it's exactly the same. The voice is a muscle. So you train it and it will go in its natural state. Like I can sing belt. I can belt vocally, but my muscle gets tight. That gets tired because it's not built to do that. I suppose it would be getting someone who is a sprinter to ask them to run a marathon or something like that. They'd probably get tired because it's not their way that they've been built. I did My Fair Lady in 2016, 2017 at the Opera House, and it was the 60th anniversary of My Fair Lady, directed by Julie Andrews. So we worked with her for 9 weeks, and for me, doing the musical, I had to learn with all the tap routines and everything to get me to the church on time and all those numbers. I found that incredibly challenging because all of a sudden I had to wear corsets and dance. And I remember the first, you do it in a rehearsal and you wear leggings and a t-shirt, then all of a sudden you get to the stage and you're in 3 layers of thick costume and wigs and hats and gloves and shoes and everything else. And I remember we were doing it for a media call, and we did the whole number out for the first time. We had to do it 3 times. The whole number out for the first time, and I ran into the wings. I literally thought I was going to vomit. And because you realise you have to be show fit, doing all that dancing with then all those costumes on. And Julie was standing right there in the wing, and she goes, "And you're right, love." And I went, I'm fine. I'm not going to vomit on her." But I really felt like I was going to vomit.
Was she good to work with, Julie Andrews?
Beautiful, 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 beautiful. She sounds exactly like she did. She was my childhood, that voice of my childhood, and it sounds exactly the same. So passionate, so humble, so gracious. Yeah.
So she was she directed it, but so she was there for the whole rehearsal period.
It was her production that she did on Broadway.
So she was recreating what she'd been taught back then. And she's had some trouble with her voice, hasn't she? She had an operation go wrong, I think. Did she have any remedies for you? Did she have any, did she travel with a box of medicaments or give you
a huge suitcase of lozenges? One was vocal zones, which you can get in New Zealand. You can't get them in Australia, so I became like the lozenge mule, and I bring them over from New Zealand. All the lozenges that my colleagues actually use, Curols and Vocal Zone, you can't buy in Australia. You have to get them in New Zealand. The Vocal Zone were actually created for Caruso, so they say, Enrico Caruso. And I don't know whether it's a placebo or whatever, but you just I've downed, I don't know how many, I can't remember. I remember once actually Don Giovanni opening night, and I was singing Donna Alvera, and I had laryngitis, and I thought, I need to get through the show. I literally had vocal zones in my bra on stage, so I could turn upstage, grab a vocal zone, stick it in my mouth, continue singing. And my friend said in the wings, she goes, "How many have you had?" And I said, "I've lost count, I don't know." She goes, "You know they have a laxative effect, don't you?" I said, "You know what? I don't care. I've got to get through this opera. Whatever happens after that, I'll deal with." Yeah. I said, "But we have got every placebo, every remedy under the book. We know we've got bottles of apple cider vinegar in the dressing room because that gets you through as well." And yeah, we know them all.
Because you're often performing injured, just like sports people do as well. I think I've seen you on crutches off stage and then flitting through the show and then getting back on the crutches off stage again.
Yeah,
so
I broke my ankle doing Tosca, so this year actually.
How did that happen? Did you fall over the baritone or something, or what?
I fell down the stairs at backstage. It was ridiculous, but anyway. And actually, I remember face planting on the very opening number of My Fair Lady, like hitting the deck, and then getting back up again and doing the rest of the Covent Garden scene, and then coming off stage, and the stage manager's got an ice pack on my ankle, and I said, no, I think I can go on. I reckon I can do the embassy ball. I might not be able to get me to the church on time. She goes, "Katherine, just go home. Just go home." And I took one performance off, and then you're back the next night. I took 2 performances off, sorry. You're back the next night, and you strap it up, and you go on stage like nothing's wrong, and then you're doing a costume change, and you literally can't lift your leg to get your tights off because you're in so much pain. And but then you go back on stage, and
it's like the adrenaline again. The adrenaline gets you through when you're actually on stage.
Well, you forget that you have an injury. That's the problem. Yeah. Interesting.
And so, has anyone ever been backstage at the Sydney Opera House? I think one of our audience said, were you in something? Did you just on a tour? So one of the things that we may have all heard about the Sydney Opera House is that when it was designed, the opera was supposed to go in the big hall and the concert was supposed to go in the small hall, but it got changed. So the backstage area at the Sydney Opera House is quite small.
I'll tell you how small it is actually. It's about the width of this stage.
So if you imagine a whole
Actually-
chorus full of women in crinolines
Or
lining
a car,
up.
when we had a car in My Fair Lady.
A
and
car?
It would, yeah, and it would, they were able to like turn, it's incredible what the crew can do, actually.
And
Yeah.
quite often the chorus has to sing from backstage because there'll be unearthly voices coming from somewhere, but they're actually lined up down the stairwell because they don't fit backstage, right?
Yeah, when we did Carmen, we did an old production, well, it's an old production now, of Francesca Zambello's production. It was it was sort of 2010, I think we started it, or 2009 actually, and it had 2 stallions on stage. Well, we actually had 2 stallions, we had a donkey, and we had chickens. When we revived it, the chickens were cut. We still had the donkey, but we had this scene in the mountains where, you know, it's Carmen's like dishing out the cards of death type thing. It's meant to be quiet and we're all like smugglers and it's really, really quiet. In the wings is, so donkey was cut. So we only ended up having these 2 horses that would come on stage and they were like majestic horses, and one would actually bow to the audience at the end of the production and kneel down and put one of its legs like that and you know, bow, and if it got a good reception, it would do another bow. And I always felt sorry for the baritone that walked on to take his bow after the horse, because the volume of the clapping in the audience just went zoom, like that. Everybody just wanted to clap the horse. But that particular horse, we used to have them backstage all night. They would, when you walk in, where stage door is at the Opera House, next to it is a roller door. And they gave the horses a lanyard with their photo on them, you know, and they'd walk through the loading dock, and then they'd load them onto the backstage lift. So at the back of the stage, there's a lift. It can be one huge lift, or it can split to 2 lifts. And they would put the horses on there, and they would go up to the back of the stage area, and then they would stay there for the entire show. So we would, you know, we hardly went to our dressing room. We just hung out with the horses. And anyway, there was this one horse called Drummer, and I had, you know, thought I had a pretty good relationship with Drummer, but it had been there'd been a lot of bad weather, so they hadn't been able to get the sort of the energy out of the horse, or the, you know, weren't able to run him that day. So he was really, you know, fired up, and he was angry. And I was stroking him here backstage, but top of Act 4 before we go on for the scene. And he grabbed my sleeve, which was this vintage lace that had been bought in Germany, and he tore the entire sleeve off my costume. And just as I was called to stage, the lace was just hanging out of this horse's mouth. And I had to go on stage and wave to this parade that's going on and hide my entire body to the audience while I had this bare arm, and then explain to like stage management why I had half a costume on my arm. And when things go wrong on stage, or for every production, they have what they call as a show report. It says when the curtain goes up, if there's any problems, if there's any issues with the running of the show, if anyone goes home sick, if anyone falls or anything like that. And so I got put on show report with this horse. And then like we did the show like 2 days later or something, because you never do the same show every night. It's always a different operas every different night, you know. And then the things just miraculously back on my arm. The wardrobe department, I mean, literally are just incredible. They can fix things in a moment's notice. It is absolutely amazing, actually, their skill.
So we've got a whole department of people who actually create the costumes at Opera Australia, and then people on duty to do emergency repairs like that in the shows.
Because you lose
incredible.
heels, you lose, you know, costumes fall apart, or wigs, or you get attached. Actually, the funniest thing that ever happens on stage is when you get attached to somebody else. That is hilarious. Like, your jewellery will get attached to their wig, or you'll get attached to their, and then you have to spend the entire scene like going around attached to them until you can actually get off. But anyway, it's all in here. I think and that's what I think I've loved, is actually like just opening the curtain in a way, and just saying, you know, this is a normal, we're normal people,
Yeah.
and this stuff goes on, and I think it has really opened up. Hopefully, I would love to think it's opened the world of opera, specifically, really, in a way, Opera Australia, in this book. Yeah.
Well, I think it's lovely that you often find in a memoir, and certainly a show business memoir, that there'll be it'll be a little bit skewed towards a little bit of gossip or a little bit of nasty, tantalising stuff. But Catherine's actually, it's not saccharine, but her love of the job and the art form shines through in all of the stories. And while we've spoken a lot about the funny things that happen, the thing that happens several times in the book is that Katherine will be transported and find tears running down her face just for the beauty of the music that she's surrounded by. But it's a lovely, positive book, but also shows all the grit and determination necessary. How have your colleagues reacted to it? Because it's funny to have a book written by an industry insider who's still inside that industry and isn't about to retire, or it's not a retrospective. It's their description of the daily life. So were you a bit worried when what your colleagues would think?
Yeah, I think it's very difficult to choose who you write about in the book or who you include in the book. And so many people would say to me, "Am I in the book? Am I in the book?" You know,
because you've named names.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah,
a lot.
Which is great.
Yeah, and you know, when you write about, say, the chapter on working with a director, I've called it the chorus director. We have some amazing directors that I've named in the book that will work with us in a beautiful way as professionals, but you can't write about the good directors without writing about the bad directors. The thing is, just don't mention the bad directors. But we just had to be very careful in the editing process that no one could read that and think, oh, is she talking about me or whatever. And when you're, writing about a company that I do feel very passionate about, but I also would like to continue working for, you have to be very careful. So I had the CEO read it, I had the lawyer at Opera Australia read it, and that for me was just very important to cross, every T and dot every I to make sure that people were happy with it. There's nothing salacious in it. It's more about a celebration of an industry. But yeah, it was tricky as to who to put in, but they're all very honoured to be in it. And
that's another lovely thing, because they're choristers and you mention them by name. So it's not this mass of anonymous people. It's people with distinct personalities, and they bring their own special qualities to each performance. Did they enjoy it? Did they enjoy being brought out into the spotlight?
Yeah, they did. And actually, funnily enough, I didn't let any of them read a draft, because for some of them who have been there a long time, they could also write their own journey, But actually recently a colleague messaged me, and she's an extra chorister, and she said, "Thank you for writing my story too." She said, and I think that really sort of hit home for me, because it is, I feel like we feel seen now, and a lot of the times we are up the back and people just don't really care about the ones that are, in the second row. And that's why I say the strapline is, a backstage pass into the life of an opera chorister, the stars who take their bow in the second row. And it's true, because we are there every single night doing every single opera. And I think, we wouldn't know my name, some people would probably maybe recognise your face, but they wouldn't know my name. But it's not about that. It's just about celebrating a group of people that are integral to the arts industry. Yeah, and I'm forever grateful to Juliet and Echo for actually allowing that story to sort of enter the history books, in terms of just with the Australian arts industry, to actually just have this particular section of the industry given a voice, which, I think is really important.
Did you have a lot of trouble finding a publisher? Because people might have thought, oh, it's very niche, and...
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I suppose I've been used to a lot of rejection, so when I got a no, I just went next.
Yeah.
I took it upon myself to study every single publishing website. I joined the Writing New South Wales and joined a beautiful writers group. And just like my singing, you know, if I prepare for an audition, I have to invest money to get better. So when I did a draft of this, I thought, right, I need to invest in an editor to get it to a point where I can submit, because it's the first thing I'd ever written, and I had to make sure that what I was handing over was the best product of what it could be at that time. So I invested in an editor, and luckily this woman, Emma Driver, actually continued my journey through Echo, which was really beautiful. So she dealt with me, you know, pre-publisher and post getting a publisher, which was incredibly special. And I wrote to every agent and nearly every publisher. All the agents said no. And I spent one Melbourne season, when we're not doing shows and in rehearsals, I was back in the apartment just getting all these submission documents ready, but I was determined to do it. And my backup plan, my last resort, was my dad, who has a printing business in New Zealand, and a side business is providing a self-publishing service to people. So I said to Dad, you're my backup plan and you better give me mates rates. But luckily, Juliet and Echo made all my dreams come true, so I was very, 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 very lucky. But yeah, it took a while, but I was like, no, it'll get on that shelf. Somehow I'll do it.
And I think you have a whole company of opera singers, soloists, chorus, backstage people, rooting for you to get this published, because if those of us who'd read a little bit of it thought, she's a pretty much of a Renaissance woman, she can take great photographs and she's a great singer, and look, she can write. And we were all very thrilled for it to come out. In fact, Opera Australia gave a beautiful launch party for Katherine, where the entire chorus came and sang their hearts out as part of the celebration of her making this incredible achievement on behalf of all of us opera people, really, and we couldn't be more proud. And I really hope you read it, because I think you'll enjoy it. It's a great read, but it's also so interesting. So.
My CEO, actually, Fiona Allen, was incredible. She'd had this, you know, because she'd started with the company, and it was just like, she goes, oh my gosh, I just got so much to learn, and she needed a break, so she went away for a weekend, and she'd had my draft on her desk for a while, and she went, I'm going to take that. And she said, I learnt more about Opera Australia, she said, in that weekend than I had. And she said to me, if you ever get a publisher, we will launch your book. And she kept her word. Fantastic. So through Echo and Opera Australia, they really did, you know, we did have a beautiful launch, and it was just such a special event. Yeah, it was a surreal event for me, because I didn't write it for that, to get that attention at all. You know, I just wrote it because I had this passion to just give myself and my colleagues a voice. And yeah, they're so proud, and so many of them are reading it, and people have bought it. You know, I've got a colleague actually that just bought 5 copies from Big W for her family, and she wants me to sign it. And she said, I'm giving this to my family because through reading your book, they will finally understand what I do. So I thought that was really lovely.
That's great. So we can hand over to any questions that you have. Yay, questions.
I'm sure we would all love it if you would be willing to sing for how much?
Oh, no, sorry. It's always warmed up. I feel like I sing all the time.
She doesn't warm down.
Yeah. I'll do a little. Oh, mio bambino caro, mi piace I think I've started that too high, actually. I can't remember. If I sang full out on this mic, I'd deafen you, so I'm not going to do that.
More to come. I've got all sorts of plans about combined book readings and concerts too. But so I think it's a good idea, and thank you for endorsing the idea.
Do you understand what you're saying in all those other languages?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, but I have to confess that sometimes when you're learning so many operas at once, and I know when I started, I was just learning them so quickly. And I remember the very first music hall of Peter Grimes. We did Peter Grimes in 2009, and Neil Armfield directed it, who I always adore working with. And I said to my colleague, I said, "Who dies in this opera?" She went, "Peter." It's like, oh, that's good to know. So most of the time I do, but the odd time I don't read the libretto before the first music hall, also because I'm just so tired. There was actually one opera called Wozzeck, and the sopranos, the mezzos, and this entire opera sang 2.5 bars. The sopranos sang 9.5 bars, and we were only in that tiny scene, so we had no idea what goes on in this opera. We were practicing the curtain call at the final stage orchestral for the next day, which was the dress rehearsal, and then you have the opening night. And I was standing on stage and I said to Emma, I said, "Who are all these people coming on for bows?" She goes, "I've got absolutely no idea." She goes, "What's it about?" And I said, "I don't know."
In defence of the chorus, though, the populace didn't know what was happening either. So.
At the back.
You spoke about how difficult it is to get into a choir. What is the kind of typical, is there a typical length of time that a chorister has as a career?
It's all about vocal health, actually, and it's all about you have to continue having lessons. We have this thing called loss of proficiency at Opera Australia. So, you know, if you're an older singer, and, you know, sometimes you can get, especially for women, when they go through menopause and stuff and a lack of estrogen and things, you can sometimes get a wobble in the voice, or just your physical, it just changes because it's a muscle, so it relaxes and doesn't maintain its elasticity and stuff. So that can be a problem if you haven't continued singing lessons and continued to have a good technique. Sometimes it's the body that gives up, because wearing some of those costumes, working on rake stages, which are like, you know, a stage that sort of goes a bit like that, in high heels and things, can just be, you know, I don't know anyone that in my chorus actually that doesn't have bad knees or bad hips after you get to a certain point. But you can have a pretty substantial career in the chorus, definitely. I think men tend to have a longer career in some ways.
Because men?
Well, and also they're rarer. The voice types are a bit rarer, aren't they? You know, there's lots of sopranos.
Well, there's always some younger ones coming down the pike, but it's the same with the guys. But there is a thing about women. But look, I think the answer is, as long as you can still sing the hell out of stuff, then you should be assured of a job, and I think that's true. Yeah.
Hello. Thank you so much for your artistry, and I've enjoyed opera since I was a teenager.
Oh, lovely.
And I've patted that horse. He was in the car park in the old days when you could actually park underneath those stairs.
Yeah.
And I remember patting the horse and saying to my friend, "Oh, isn't it exciting? We're getting a real live horse."
Yeah.
So not knowing. And it was beautiful.
Yeah.
But I was going to ask, how do you juggle your private life with this form of art? Because it's so time-consuming and your hours are crazy.
Yeah, that's very true. And I think for all of us, it is a huge sacrifice. And actually, recently, over the last sort of 18 months, there's been 8 divorces in the chorus, because we tour a lot. You know, most people will read their children their bedtime story on FaceTime, because they're already at the theatre before the child has to go to sleep. It's very difficult because we're not in control of the time that we can take on holiday. You know, the company, like for example, when the musical hits at the Opera House, which this year was Sunset Boulevard, that's when the main company go on holiday. For me, it was different when I did My Fair Lady. I was doing My Fair Lady rehearsals in the in the daytime from 10 till 5:45, and then I was running to the theatre to do shows every night. It was doing Carmen's and everything else. It's ridiculous. You work 6 days a week. But you have to love it, really. But the sacrifices are real. Marriages, weddings, funerals. I know someone that, she buried her mum in the afternoon and came to the show that night. People just deal with things like that differently. The support within that group at Opera Australia, it's like a family. It seriously is. And actually, when I went off and did My Fair Lady for 18 months, and that was part of Opera Australia, but it was also John Frost, and I came back into the chorus the next day, and how privileged to have that contract, to be able to do that. But so many people said to me, welcome home, and it really is. It really is a family, and with the amount of time we spend together, actually, we're very, very lucky. We get on incredibly well. Yeah. Hi.
Hi, thank you, Catherine. It's fascinating. I just, following up from something, is it Donna said about being moved by the music that you're singing or hearing? And, I suppose as an audience in opera, we tend to be transported and uplifted and to be moved, to witness beauty, to witness tragedy. For you, is there a particular song or opera that never ceases to move you, no matter how many times you're doing it over and over?
Sometimes there is, or like orchestral passages. There's actually this moment in Turandot in Act 2 where, so the story is, Turandot's not a very nice lady, and there's all these men that try and become her suitor, but to become her suitor they have to answer these 3 riddles. Most of them have failed to do so, but this one, Kalaf, actually succeeds. And so, but he says to her, well, I'm going to give you a riddle. I bet you don't know what, pretty much, rough translation, I bet you don't know what my name is. And so she has to find out what his name is. And there's this, and he says, Il mio nome non sai, my name you will never know. And then there's just in the orchestral, there's just a this beautiful just moment of just Nessun Dorma just being just introduced. It's like a tease, and always makes me cry on stage. It's ridiculous, but it's just comes at the most beautiful moment. I mean, my goodness, Puccini knew how to write music. Like his Tosca, his Butterfly, his his Turandot, everything is just, it's just heartbreaking. But then sometimes there's these moments that we sing unaccompanied, like in Faust. The end of Faust, actually, when Mephistopheles, the devil, is going down to hell, and there's this beautiful moment when Marguerite dies and goes to heaven. The chorus sing, she will be saved, she will be saved, and we used to sing it from the loges, and thank goodness we did, because nearly, at least half of us were in tears. It's the most incredible moment, while Teddy Rhodes in this particular production was like going down to hell and doing his little to the audience. It's just the most powerful. There are some incredibly powerful moments that literally will make me cry. Yeah. Opening night of Lohengrin in Melbourne, actually, with Jonas Kaufmann, and the overture, and we were all like slowly coming to the stage, and I think nearly every single person on that stage was in tears before we'd even sung a note. It was just so overwhelming. Yeah. Oh, he's lovely, isn't he? He's a lovely man. Yeah, very down to earth. Yeah.
Wow. I feel quite teary just thinking about all those things. That was Madame Butterfly you sang earlier?
The Turandot.
The Turandot, yeah, right, yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, wonderful. Donna, fabulous. Thank you so much. And thank you, Catherine. It was a really great. Please buy the book. Oh, we have to draw the raffle. Catherine, would you like to be our barrel girl?
Sure.
You make your way down there. Please go and buy the book out the back.
Thank you. And I would just like to take this opportunity to thank the festival also for inviting me. It's my first one, so I feel very humbled. Thank you.
Yay.
Yeah.